Good morning. We're going to do a quick revisit to part 2 of our dog modeling class. I'm going to share some screens with you this morning. I wanted to try to get into a little bit more detail with you. So in order to do that, let me see if I can get this screen shared up here. There you go. So hopefully now you can see, let me rearrange my Zoom stuff out of the way here. So what we're going to do is last week we had I'll show you where we were at. I'm going to hide the bitmap layer and bring out our components. I'll do a split screen here really quick. So where we had left off is we had blocked together using the vectors that you can see here. We used all these vectors to build a bunch of separate components. And you can see there's quite a list of the components: the ears, the chest, the face, the eye sockets. All these components were built as standalone items. And we talked about how to stack them on top of each other to block in the basic shape. So what I really wanted to work on today, though, was the sculpting tools. So we had some great questions last night and got to go through it, but it turns into a long, this is probably to take this dog to finishing point now is probably, I would generally spend a couple hours going over the minutia of the details of how I would sculpt it once it's blocked in. And a lot of it is just plain artistic preference. And, you know, do you make this really deep? Do you want individual hairs? A lot of those type of artistic preference questions, but what I really wanted to focus on is just show you how I take this blocked in form and how the sculpting tools are used. So a couple little housekeeping issues is I do tend to use, there's our bitmap layers. I have a separate image of the dog over here that I use while I'm sculpting. And it's not the one that's behind the item. So, and I use this because what I'm looking for, you'll see a lot of dog models on the internet where someone tries to draw in the individual hairs. And I would challenge you and say, take a close look at a dog. Unless you're very close, you can't see the individual hairs. So if you look at a model and it has individual hairs drawn on it, I'm going to tell you, it starts to look cartoonish. So my approach artistically to this is to block in the big flowing shapes. So you'll see there's a teardrop shape here around the face and the hair, and as far as how the hair lays on the animal. This is a great big blocked in collar around here. Now, what does happen is there's little bits and areas where, because of how they stand out, you can see individual hairs show up in some of these areas. So we'll try to do that, but I don't want to burden you with the idea that you're going to draw every one of these hairs. Really good artists don't. They block it in a big kind of a general sort of a way. So we're going to work on blocking this in. I'll show you a little bit about how to use the sculpting tools. I'm going to try to touch on most of the sculpting tools when we do this. I did add in some paws. The block dog was what we did last week. I did add in the paws, the nostrils and the mouth last week. And I believe I have him right here. So I'm not going to revisit that. You can see what happens. I have 2 models turned on now. So I'm going to turn that off and turn this off. That's not the one I want because it's already been modeled on. So yeah, this is the one we want to work with right here, where most of the features are available. And you can see what I have not added in is like the eyeballs and the tongue that are not there. And the reason I do that is because we're going to be modeling underneath the tongue area. We're going to be modeling around the eye, and I don't want to destroy these perfect little orbs here. I'll drop those in at the very end and play with those. So I'm going to use this tool up here again. It's the one I prefer to use instead. We used to just have to use a bake. Well, the problem with bake was you would lose all these individual components. If you want to come back and work with them later, you can't. So I like to use this. It says create components from visible models. So you watch, it'll drop it up here, and then I'm going to pull it back down. I'm going to create a component. I'm going to turn these other ones off so I don't have. So now I have that basic component that I can work with. So let's go do some modeling. So I've clicked on this and I'm going to come up to here to modeling tools. I'm going to hit sculpt visible model. And it turns on, and now we have this model where we can play with it. Now, part of the problem I had last night was my pad was not working correctly, my Wacom pad. So I wanted to take some guys had some questions last night, so I'm going to just stop sharing for a minute and try to show you my Wacom pad so you can see what that was. If you haven't seen one before, so basic Wacom pad, this is the one I use. I have a custom stylus that goes with it. And the advantage of these over a mouse is this is pressure sensitive. So these 4 lit dots that you see, that's the corners of my computer screen. So if I go to this corner up here, it's going to take my pen right to that corner. It takes my mouse there effectively. So this is just a great way. It's more for most of us, if you've done artwork before and you like to draw and you can deal with a pen easier, it's an easier way to do it. This particular one is a Wacom model PTH651. So they have a bunch of different models. They're different. There's also ones you can draw directly on, which are very expensive, but ones like this are pretty affordable, and they really add to when you have a lot more control than with a mouse. And it is very, we're going to get into some pretty tiny stuff. So let's get back onto the screen again. All right, so this is, pull this over here a little bit. So the very first thing I'm going to do is, remember, I'm trying to create these great big flowing shapes on this dog. So the way we're blocked in right now, I have some very, I'm going to use Twiddle as this tool I'm going to show you over here. And you can see I have these very abrupt edges. Well, that doesn't, there are some deep edges you can see on the dog, but they don't show up like this. Now, you're going to have your own preference for how you design through this stuff, but what I want to do is smooth all that out to start with. Then I'm going to come back and build it. So I'm just going to use the smoothing tool. You can set the size of it here. You can set the strength of it, and you can set just how smooth it is. Or I'm going to use it as very smooth right now. And I'm just going to smooth the general, all the big general areas out. I'm not really changing the shape of the dog. I'm just starting to soften those curves. So you can see there's not a whole lot of artistic thought going into this. It's just get that stuff smooth. I'm staying away from the mouth area and the eyes because I like some of those abrupt edges there. I'm going to try to hold on to those for a while. So there, I've kind of smoothed that in. I'm going to go back and forth and use that tool quite a bit. A couple tools on here you want to understand. There's another one down here called preserve transparency. So as long as that's clicked, you can't do anything outside of the existing model. So if I wanted to add long flowing hairs or a leash or something over here, I wanted to add something else. If I unclick that, you could actually go beyond the edges of the model. But with that clicked, it means that any dragging or pulling that I do won't go off to the side of the model. So you want to understand how that works. Other than that, there's a smoothing tool, a smudging tool, which we'll play with a bit. Removing is just what it is. Picture you're playing with clay, and this is where you could scrape it off. Deposits, where you can add something back on. This is a magic tool right here. When I learned to paint, when I teach painting classes, one of the first things I teach people, if we're painting with acrylics take maybe 7 or 8 minutes to paint to dry when we're painting in class. So you can get part of your painting all dried up and maybe dab a little tree on. If you don't like it, wet cloth, you have about 6 or 7 minutes to take it off. That's what this brush is. So if you do something, so I go in here, for example, and I come in here and I go and I do this, and I go, oh, I removed too much right there. Well, I just come over and hit the undo brush, and that goes away. Now it also, you can see it did away with all the smoothing that I did in that same area. So let's just say I come back here and I smooth this again. And now here's the rest of the undo brush. Once you have something that you like, come down here and hit keep. Okay, so now the only thing keep does, and it's the same if you close out of this thing, you hit okay and leave, it does the same, you get the same thing. So now let's go put that same mistake in in this area right here. But now watch how the smoothing reacts to this. I'm going to take this out of here and go, okay, so I don't want that big deep here. So I come back and I hit the undo brush and it removes that mistake. But everything that I did before, the smoothing that was done in here before the keep is now protected from the undo brush. So you get parts of this that you really like, learn to use that keep function at the bottom of the modeling tray. So the first thing I do in general when I'm is that I look to get the great big flowing shapes of the hair kind of blocked in. And to do that, I'll use remove to start with. And I'm going to come in here and try to get, you can see there's a great big upside down teardrop right here. So I'm going to show you how between remove and smoothing, I tend to, so I'll set that for a medium strength, a little bit smaller. And I know that right in here, I want to set up that area of and you can see the hair. Now this is the artistic part of this. I mean, if you guys take painting classes with me somewhere down the road, or if you do, I've been wood carving by hand for 25, 30 years, I guess now. So this is just what I look for in a model. And you can see the hair around here fades away. It's, if you were talking about this in Z depth right here, this might be a Z depth of well, what it says right here is 2.2. Well, this should be a Z depth of much less than that. So we're going to use the sculpting tool to, I'm going to make this a little bit bigger and soften it a bit, but we want to make that a little bit bigger, a little stronger, a little more generalized. We want this all to be curved. Same over here. We know that this kind of wraps down and you can see there's a curve in that. Do some of this. So what's interesting is this is just, and again, this is the artistic part of I'm gonna make that a little, go to a little smaller right in here. You can see I went, I think, a little too deep right in there, but I'm just going to fix it by smoothing over it. The other thing about this Wacom pen that I just love, and if you guys get one of them, if I'm going to do a pass here and a pass here, not much happens. But if I push down on the pen, I get, we've talked about it, but it's pressure sensitive. So you can, instead of having to adjust the strength, you can just press a little bit harder on the pen and get some of what you want to happen without really adjusting. So you can see there's a big darkened area in here. So I'm going to work on that a little bit of strength. I'm going to make it more. And this is just, this kind of wraps around this way. You can see it's a bit curved there. There's some shapes that come off this way, off the side of the mouth. And again, just working on big rough shapes. See this sort of big teardrop piece right here? I'm going to see if I can, that's going to be about like this. You can see there's some, and again, I'm still using the remove button. And this is almost all this is the artistic part of this. And you're going to have to, frankly, develop skills to do this. This dog carving, this dog model is, my opinion, one that this is quite difficult. So if you're doing this with a simpler model, then it's better to start there. But I wanted to let you see that this stuff can be done. Even a complicated piece like this can be done using kind of just blocking this in. So we have that. I'm going to come up here and show you some things around this eye. I'm going to twiddle in here again and get in a little bit closer. around the eye. And you can see there's some recessed areas here. There's a puffy part underneath the eye, and then it fades down here. So I'm gonna try to back off a little bit, and it looks like I need to add some depth in here and then take some out. So I'm gonna hit deposit, mid-range. I'm gonna put that in. I'm gonna smooth it a bit because I probably created a high spot right there. And then I'm gonna try to create these very pretty lines between the dark area and the light area of the cheek. So I want to hit remove. I want it to be a not very smooth, which is a very sharp line. And I'm going to come in here and just create, probably not small enough right there. Now I'd rather go with a light and just come underneath this area here. You can see it kind of pokes up in here a little bit. And then of course, if you bump, my Wacom pen has a button on the pen that so that kind of gets that rough shape in there the way I want that. And then I'm going to put a little bit around where the eye goes. I'm going to add some stuff in here, and I'm going back to smooth for a minute. I'm going to smooth some of this out. And then I'll show you smudging. Smudging is the hair tool. And it's, so if we want to create, I tell you guys, learn, this is a phrase, I call it the illusion of detail. We don't want to draw every hair on here, but what we want to do is create the illusion that there is hairs on this thing. And again, I think if you see a model where you see the whole dog is covered in individual hairs, it's cartoonish. So if you're not looking for, and that's great if you're looking for a cartoonish model, and they look fine. But the reality is, if you're 8 or 9 or 10 feet away from a dog, it's very hard to see the individual hairs. You do see these big block shapes here. So if we want to use the smudge tool to create the illusion of some hairs, and this is something you'll want to practice with this a single pull. So what we're really doing is creating this. You can also use remove if you've built up an area there, and you can use remove to give an indication of some hairs in the area. Now, so that's the smudging tool. So we'll play some more with that after we get more of the shape finished up here. So let me look at, so right now, let's do a couple things I'm going to do really quick. Is this dog's nose, I built this all up because I wanted it out quite a bit, but you can see this is not right in here. So I'm going to take this off and I'm going to smudge it up between the eyes. You're not going to see me model the whole dog today, but you're going to see me change the basic shape using different tools. And that's really the purpose of the class today, not to go through all the detail of. So let's start in here with smoothing. We use a pretty strong smoothing here, and I'm going to I'm just repeating in that direction. I don't want to go over too far into where the eyes are. So let's twiddle it a little bit, look at from the sides and see how close we came to accomplishing what we wanted. Oh, went a little too far with my twiddle. So you can see I kind of got it starting to come down, but I really want to still take out some more right in here. Now you could leave you could leave the design sideways like this and try to run the remove tool from here, but I think the best thing to do is just turn it back. You can use these tools up here. I don't know how many of you do this, but if you hit the Z, it'll square the model up to the looking right down from the top, and the X tool up here will turn it so you can look from the side to see how high everything. And this is a nice way to be able to see, yeah, are the feet and the nose, is there a high spot that needs to be fixed, like some of this collar area in here is too high. And then if you click on the Y, it'll just spin it around and look at it right from the Y perspective on that. And you know, so if you get off track when you're twiddling, just hit the Z and it brings you right back, straightens you up while you're modeling. So let's try to just remove some right in this area here. This is a little, you can see it, that's pretty aggressive and it's not smooth. So I'll just, now I took off quite a bit in there. So let's smooth that quick and see if I've got a better line on the nose than what I had before. Remember, it's relief carving, so it's the illusion of true detail. So you're never going to get the full face of the dog. So you have to just create a bit of illusion. So that's pretty close to what I want there. I'm going to smudge it a little bit more up in here. That's not what I wanted. We'll just take that off with the smoothing. I'm going to hit smudge again, but I had it set way too strong. So I just kind of took it off. I'm going to take the smudge like that. Start to get that smoothed in. All right, so let's do some, I'm again, this is just the journey from a blocked in piece. I'm going to make it reasonably strong. Smooth. There's a lot more mass. See, I've got the ears built in. This is kind of the back of the ears, but all this area around the edge where there's more mass in it, I need to put some more materials on. If you were modeling with clay, you would just say, I got to add some more material in here. So I'm just going to go around with my pen and add some material on the edges. And you'll notice that like right in here, if I add over top of those hairs, it doesn't cover them up, that it lifts them up, so that those details actually kind of stay there. You just got to get, so you can do add and raise up a whole area that's been modeled already if you're careful with it. So I'm going to add in where these hairs are here. I like these tufts of fur up here. I'm going to add some materials in here to capture that. You can see he has hair in his ear in here. I'll kind of lay it in a little bit. This is just really quick sculpting. We'll do the other ear same way. You can see love this pretty, this is where some of the hair, when you're doing detail on something like these dogs, I'm not a big fan of having all the hair in, but again, the illusion of detail. And this is one of the areas where if you have basically the dog's face is pretty smooth, you don't see hair here on the nose, for example. I mean, you can tell, your brain tells you, it finishes the artwork for you and tells you there's hair there because you see little tiny bits of detail. But here, there's some hair showing up, and up around the ears and the sides of the face, there's most definitely some hair. So let's add in a bit more here, and we'll try to finish some of the ears and part of the face so you can see how the finished piece looks. So I'm going to go back to smoothing. I want to, this part of the head just gently rolls into the ears. It's not as abrupt as my current model has, so I'm going to soften those on both sides of the face. So now we have enough hair to work with up on that. Let's play around with some of the detail around the ear. So I'm going to go back. I'm going to set a pretty small diameter, reasonably mid-range smooth, mid-range strength. And I want to pull some detail up right here. And I can see I'm not pulling enough, so I'm going to get some more strength. And this is just grabbing and pulling. If you picture, you're just swiping through a pile of clay. With this little pen. My pen's still acting up a little bit. I got to reload it in the system, but you can see here's some pretty good swipes right there. I'm going to go around the edge of this and create some illusion of fur on the edges of the ears because some of that does show up. Right in here. And certainly down here at this side of the ear, I'm going to pull some in to emphasize that more. And you can see this is just using this is all stuff is getting done with the smudge tool. Just a pretty, and I'm going to come back over here and finish. So that's, and again, your guys' discretion, I would spend quite a few more time on this part of the dog to get better detail in this, but I just want to show you how available it is to make details like that on the pretty tiny details. So I'm going to smooth these out a little bit because I think that's a bit too much. Let's look at the mouth for a minute. I'm going to grab this. See how there's some, you can see on his upper lip, he has the hairs come down there. And I have two different, when we built the blocks, there's a block below that is not at the right height. So I'm just going to use the smudge tool to pull down in here a bit. We'll go back to twiddle for a second and pull you guys in a bit quicker, a little bit closer. So you can see I pulled down too far into his mouth a bit. So this is why you zoom in sometimes. So I'll go back and I'm going to use, let's see if the undo brush will help me here. I'm going to undo some of this inside the mouth. Want to see that? I love that. Go back to smudging and we'll. So yesterday I was showing the guys, I actually carved this dog yesterday, and one of the questions when we did this is, well, how small of detail will show up? Well, and this, remember, this dog we're doing he's 72 inches high in the modeling form, and he's 6 inches deep. So I carved him yesterday. I'll drop out of here really quick and show you what I did yesterday. So this is the dog carved in 9 inches deep, and I have probably a little bit too much light here to make this easy to see, but if you can start to see that here below his mouth and here, some of the little details show up here, and this is all tied to the quick, easy way to check this is I used a 16th inch bit, and you can drop a 16th inch diameter circle on your model and just see how big it would be and if it would actually get down in these. So let's pretend for a minute that that's a 1/4 inch bit. Well, that 1/4 inch bit's not going to go in the nostrils. It's not going to pick that little stuff up. But if I had a 16th inch bit, then you can pretty much tell that these are probably going to show up on this scale. Now, when you shrink it down to 12 inches, that all changes again. So you guys know, you resize the thing, and for when I resize this down to 9 inches, this detail I'm doing right now showed up. So you just got to play with that a bit and understand what it all has to do with the size of the bits you're using and some of that. So sometimes I let's put in remove here for a minute, and we'll make it pretty, it's not smooth. We're going to make it pretty strong, and we're going to put in some little, where the hairs are on a dog's face. And all I'm doing is just clicking in some little circles there, and it picks up on this. Some of this stuff, when you get in really close with a dog, you can see that would show up. I'm going to smooth this stuff out. come back and play with that later. So those are the basic tools I use when I'm modeling like this. So I did tell you I'm gonna close out of this for a minute. I'm gonna hit keep, which you don't have to. If you're gonna hit close, I'm gonna hit OK. So that just saved everything now. So what I've done is the way that currently works, and then I'm gonna add in. So I've already modeled the tongue. And so the catch is here, I'm working down in this area here. So because the tongue is not in this recessed level that I'm working in, it stacks, and it isn't, you can see what happened. It stacked the wrong way. So I'm going to grab the tongue. So when you're working in modeling, it matters where the models are in your hierarchy of models here. So you can see I dropped it down in the area I'm working. And now it's kind of where I want it. Probably I want it a little bit deeper. Want to have add a little depth to that. So I'm just going to come back in and add just a couple of 0.12 just to cover up where it's not showing all the way through. I'm going to make the tongue just a little bit more. So there's if I was finished sculpting around the mouth, that's where I would drop the tongue in. You can see why I have a lot of sculpting to do around this area right here and here. Same's true for the eyes. So I turn on the left eye and the right eye. You can see that I've got to drag those down here into this area where I'm working to get them to play the way they're supposed to. Here's the right eye. I'll turn it on first and then I'll drag it down in there. So this is why I have a lot of work to do around the eyes and the tongue and to get the rest of this dog all worked out. But what I don't want to do, and then last night we took an hour and whatever, 10 minutes and people watched me move my mouse around and stuff. But I've given you the essence of what it means to sculpt this stuff. You got to spend a lot of time looking at the minutia of this detail in here, what you want. Even when I zoom in like this, you can't see an individual hair. You see here's a cluster of hairs, and it's very hard to get to the point, even over in this kind of areas. That's a cluster of 15 or 20 hairs. So I'd encourage you to block out big shapes when you're dealing with hair, and then find some. Well, I'm going to spend a couple more minutes just right now on this really deep area right in here and how I would finish it hair-wise. And then other than that, this is the artistic part of it, but I've shown you the tools I use. I'm going to reset. I'm going to go back to my, when I go back to sculpting again, you're going to see it's showing you what I'm clicked on. We're going to lose the eyes and the tongue again, which is fine because I'm not really ready to fuse those to the model. I'm going to hit Sculpting Tool. And we're back in sculpting mode again. So I'll give you a couple minutes of time. I'm just going to try to finish some of this beautiful hair down here and a little bit around the mouth for a couple minutes, and we'll call this good. You just get to sort of see a little bit of how the kind of things I look for. So I'm going to start up here. If you look on the mouth, see that the nose kind of tapers in this way and the overall bigger nose doesn't. So just for the sake of, I'm going to hit remove. Again, I'm going to make it reasonably weak, open up a bit, and I just want a bit of a taper to show up there. You can see, I don't remember I saved it a while ago, so I can hit the undo button and fix what I just did. Make that. And you can see those little tiny dots I made on there a while ago don't get removed by my fixing, which is because I saved it a while ago. So now I'm going to hit remove. I'm going to make it smoother. Let's see if I can get this right this time. Yeah, just a little bit of a taper showing up on that part of the nose is one of the things I want to work on. A little bit down in here. I really haven't worked on this side of the face really at all. I've been putzing more on the left side of the face. Straighten this up a bit. So I would, if my pen's doing what I'm asking it to do, this is work in that area and clean that up, create some detail around that lip area. And then I'd go back to my smudging tool in here and create, there's just an awful lot of texture along this line right here. Some of those splotches like that you're seeing are just because I'm doing this online right now, and there's a bit of a time delay on how fast my pen remarks. So let's look at this big block of hair down here, and this one in particular. This one, the hair hangs pretty straight. So I would come in here first with a remove tool, and I'm going to just try to create when you look at those things, there's generally, and you're saying, well, Scott, you said no individual hairs. Well, this is, again, if you look close, this is big blocked areas of hairs that I think make this a little bit stronger. And these ones tend to curve a bit this way. And this is so I just keep going back at these areas to create these groups of hair that I like that are visible. I just sort of jump back and forth quite a bit on this, so you guys will get your own rhythm for it. This was probably for a beginning dog, I would pick something like that Bull Terrier. I posted something that has less hair because hair does take some time to get a feeling of how to of what you like out of it, what works for you. And that's about all I'm going to show you on this right now. Let's back out of here for a minute. So that's the tools I use, and probably, like I mentioned to you guys earlier, probably I would spend a couple hours working on a dog like this to get, and then I'll file them away for a day or two and come back. And keep playing with it. But I'll get into the details of what's going on here around the nose and in the nostrils and flatten this out. And there's a little bit of a raised area here. I spend a lot of time around the eyes, and if it's a commission piece, you can spend hours doing this to get it the way you want it to be. But you can see the basic tools I use in Sculpting Tools, and we build up a model. And from here on, it's your own artistic journey and using these tools. So that is about the shorter, better version of how to use sculpting tools. So with that, I think I'll say adios from Alaska, and that was fun. If you guys have questions or there's other classes you want to do, I'm thinking of doing a few more classes like this. If there's specific things you want to see about building models, I'm happy to share some time with you. So again, thank you very much, and look forward to talking to you later.